Our extensive coverage of the 2022 provincial election campaign continues, and joining us now with an in-depth look at the Liberal campaign so far is Liberal strategist Alvin Tejo. Alvin, thanks so much for joining us this morning on CP24. How are you feeling this late in the campaign, just 2 days to go, the final push? What do you think about Stephen Del Duca's chances at the polls?
Well, like you said, it's the final push. There's only 2 days left. Advanced polling is done. And I think we can read a lot from what's happened over the last several weeks. You can see the polls, but you can see that it's actually still pretty tight. The Liberals are down about 9 percentage points when you look at some of the polls lately over the weekend, which is really only 1 in 10 voters. And right now, there are some incredibly tight races going on around the GTA. You've got Mississauga, you got Brampton, you got Scarborough. There's over 16, 17 seats in those ridings alone, which could make the difference between a majority government or a minority government for the Fords, or even a difference of who's going to be the official opposition party. So there's a lot that's going to happen over the next couple of days, and it really matters in terms of what the turnout is going to be. And with that advanced polling that we've seen, we had over 1 million votes, so a lot more people, 400,000 more people voted in the advanced poll this time than they did in 2018. And that's usually a good sign in terms of changing governments, but we'll still have to wait and see what the results are.
I want to get to the majority versus minority government, and I also want to talk a little bit more while we're on this about voter turnout, how crucial that is going to be. I've asked this question of some candidates and some pundits over the last couple of days. Do you think because of the pandemic, the ideas behind health care and education being so front and center for so many people, topics of conversation for years now, that has created a more engaged electorate? Or do you think that, that it won't necessarily get people to the polls in the way that maybe the Liberal Party needs it to?
No, I think people are definitely more engaged. People understand now the consequences of governments, the consequence of electing a government that isn't willing to act or isn't willing to listen to the science, and that it has real life and death effects in terms of what their healthcare system is like, how safe their schools are, what the kind of education their children are going to get. I think the debate right now, and the opposition parties had to keep pushing this message, is to get rid of the Ford government and then make their case for themselves as to which should replace that. In terms of turnout, I think you're looking at these ridings, especially around Toronto, where you have a lot of three-way races. And it's going to be incredibly important in terms of the ground game. And these teams who are going out there and going to pull the votes and have those identified supporters actually coming out and showing up on Election Day. We had, I think, 5 or 6 ridings decided by fewer than 200 votes in 2018. I would say we could easily double that this time around, and that'll make a huge difference in terms of, again, who's the opposition, but also whether or not there's a minority government. And it's really important who the opposition is if we do have a minority government, because that's the government that's the party that's going to hold them to account, but also that's the government in waiting. Right, so there's going to be a lot of jockeying over the next couple of days and positioning who's the best party to take on Doug Ford amongst the opposition parties. But where you're looking at right now is that the NDP are losing seats to both the Liberals and the PCs. Right, so the NDP had one of the most successful elections since 1990 in 2018, and those 40 seats they're not going to be able to hold. They're going to lose a number of those to the NDP, to the Liberals, and they're going to lose a number of those to the PCs as well. And you're going to see Liberals gaining from both the PCs as well as the NDP. So it'll be really interesting to see how this turns out.
What about the security of the Liberal leader's seat? Speaking of, opposition and the ability, for accountability once government is formed, are you concerned about that at all for Stephen Del Duca?
Listen, I've campaigned with Stephen Del Duca. I've campaigned against him. I wouldn't count him out in any election. He's going to work incredibly hard. He knows that riding inside and out. He's represented it for 2 cycles. But most importantly, he's the leader of the party. There are going to be people in that community who want that voice at Queen's Park, who want a leader of a party to represent them. There's going to be a little bit of a bump there. I know it's going to be tight, but I think ultimately Stephen will pull through, and he's going to show that why he should be the next premier of the province moving on from there. And like they say, the only poll that matters is the one on Election Day, and everyone's going to be working hard to make sure they elect Stephen Del Duca as continuing on as leader, but also as many Liberals to have the biggest caucus that they can on election night.
Okay, Liberal strategist Alvin Tejo. Thanks so much, Alvin, for joining us on CP24 this morning.
Thanks so much.